No,
Apparently not.
I was playing. We had a phone down in the States, and you had to do okay, Google, do this, map me to here. Did too. Yeah, for the data. We had it's called a hotspot, and it was not behaving the way we wanted it to. So we ended up getting a phone that we could tether to. That worked. That was the best result. Yeah, it didn't feel cheap at the time. So, but once we got the phone, we were good. So, for the first, I don't know, month, I think I spent $500 on data, and that was not the plan. Yeah, it was stupid. And, yeah. Well, we had a hotspot. It was only active down there, so it's not like it was roaming or anything of that nature. This was set up specifically for this location. Anyway, we ended up going with a different plan, buying a phone, and it took a while to figure it out, but yes. Yeah. It's very annoying. Yeah, it's just, I have a tech guy. However, the shopping for options is not trivial because, and we looked, well, now that we have this fancy phone, maybe what we'll do is get a SIM card here. Then we look at the plans here. The only thing that I'm willing to buy won't work where I live. All the rest of them are like, I'm not paying that. So it's On Your Fire, April 5th, 2017. We've got about 2 minutes, so we'll wait that 2 minutes. She's always late, that's okay.
She warned us this time.
Yep.
Sorry, you said Julie?
Julie, yeah, Julie Gannett.
Oh, is she?
Well, there you go.
Said she was gonna-
Then she's not late at all. She's early.
And Michelle Smith, Pat Allen,
Yep.
Lorianne,
Yep.
Maurice,
Mm-hmm.
and Sarah F.
Okay. Well, and everybody goes in the energy anyway. We have a bunch of people who are not in the same time zone that are, there's a lot more people online than there are in the room. Okay, so we're not going to do what I thought we were going to do yesterday, because you heard this morning. As is often the case, I had this whole plan for the 2 sessions in April, and they were like, nope, you're doing this instead. At least it didn't change when I got here. Yeah, again? Yeah, no, this was this morning when I was meditating. It was like, yeah, this is what you're doing instead. So the fun part is, spring and fall are always a change energy time, and fall is for letting go. So it's kind of like you let go of stuff in the fall, and you process through that over the winter, and then the spring is the time of change where you're stepping into the new. So because it's time to step into the new, we're going to clear karma, which is like really get rid of the old. And specifically, we're going after persecution karma.
Smell the flames.
Burn, baby, burn.
We are Canadian martyrs.
Right?
Don't we mention that?
That's hilarious. That's the name of the church, right? Canadian Martyrs. What a perfect theme, right? Well, I'm glad there's no pictures of people burning. Thanks.
Even all the men in the church are cold.
Right? Wow. I think we'll go to sacred space, and that'll give us a stable point to clear from. So pay attention to your breath. Picture the bowl in the cradle of your pelvis, the stream of light pouring into the bowl and overflowing it like a glass left under a running tap. Speaking of burning, we hear fire engines going by outside, apropos. Right? That's hilarious. Okay, now bring yourself to float in the bowl. And just kind of soak with that. Let that light soak into you. Breathe in that light so it's going into your tissues and into your blood. And just kind of permeating you and your energy. And imagine you can kind of look down. What you're going for is the local soul, the one that belongs to this lifetime. And it appears like a light. And, depending on how your subconscious decides to present it, it could look like a candle or a piece of lightning or a light bulb. It's, whatever imagery your mind creates is fine. Just imagine yourself sinking down towards that light. That you can float down, float down, float down. It's always further than you think. Float down, float down. And then allow yourself to kind of stand beside the source of light so you can kind of get in sync with it. Oh, okay, we're going to stay syncing with it for a little while. So you're aware of that light, and that light is your connection to spirit, your awareness of your immortality, your awareness of one with. Just think about why you're holding yourself separate from that. And it could be just as simple as like, okay, we're going after the big karma. Let's delay that for a little while. Or it could be a way to hold yourself in a pain or in a familiar dissociation. Because we usually step into this pretty quick, and a lot of people are not going there right now. So I'll address each of the ones that I see. So let's delay going after the karma. It's up to you if you want to do it. It's not like anybody's pushing you, so you could stay where you are. You can step into the light. You can stay where you are. You can not do anything. You can whatever rings your bell. This is completely your choice. And if you've made up a story in your head that you have to do it because of some idea of yourself as a spiritual person or because you're committed to your evolution or whatever, then pause and think about how that is calling you wrong. Maybe let yourself say, you know what? Don't need to call myself wrong. If I don't want to do it, I don't want to do it. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe never. Whatever. And so pause and just let yourself have choice. let yourself be who you are and be okay with that. It is what it is. We like to create false finish lines, eh? And the only value of a false finish line is to feel wrong. It's the only value of it. You make them up all the time. I need to do this by such and such a time. And we're very conditioned that you have to be busy to be of value. And so, what if it's okay to let that go? Just make a note for yourself to catch yourself if you start making false deadlines. Because it is a way to lash yourself, right? So if you make a deadline of some kind that isn't real, then recognize what you're doing is looking for a way to lash yourself. If you say, well, but sometimes I make a deadline and then I meet it, then I get to feel good. Okay, so I want you to think about where that feel good comes from. Because is that an actual feel good, or is that I succeeded in conforming? And if it comes from I succeeded in conforming, then it isn't about you, it's about pleasing people, which is codependent, which is, again, gets to call you wrong. It's just a more convoluted way, because we're very clever, right? We'll be really creative about calling ourselves wrong. Right? So that even if you say, oh, here's my deadline, and I've met my deadline, now I'm a good girl, I met my deadline, that's actually still a way of calling yourself wrong. Because what you've done is you've created a judgment of yourself. Right? So what if there's no requirements? What would that even feel like? Would you even know how to, if you had no requirements, what would you do? What would you even do? And then how would you know how to feel like you have a value or a purpose or a worth if you don't know what to do? If there's nothing to do, then what's the point? Absolutely, I can repeat it. In English, right? This time. So, it's easy to see that if you make a false deadline and you don't make the deadline, that you're calling yourself wrong. That's easy to see. However, if you make a false deadline and you achieve it, then you're patting, I did good. I pat myself on the back, I did the laundry on Monday or whatever your made-up deadline is. The thing is, it's not real. It doesn't matter. And so the actual pat on the back is for conforming. It's not for achieving. Right? So the whole dynamic of I must achieve, and I must be a person who achieves in order to feel good about myself, that creates an automatic calling yourself wrong, because if you're not achieving and you're not performing, then you're wrong. So the I did good by performing and achieving it's feeding that whole construct of you have to perform, you have to succeed, you have to achieve the deadline, you have to do things right, your house has to look a certain way, you have to behave a certain way, you have to be worth. And it's not the truth. So because it's fundamentally not the truth, again, you're calling yourself wrong. Right? So it's equivalent to saying, if you say, well, okay, here's the rule. If I wear a green hat, then I'm the right kind of person. So you put on your green hat, you say, I'm the right kind of person, which means you can also be the wrong kind of person. It means that wearing the green hat and being the right kind of person isn't a truth for you. It isn't the truth of you. Because the minute you take the green hat off, you're wrong. Why would you create a situation that can make you wrong? Now, your ability to be right is dependent on this green hat. Why would you build that? Why wouldn't you just be right? I am who I am. Hat or no hat, I am who I am, and what I am is right. There is no hat that determines whether I'm right or not. And so the idea that wearing the green hat or meeting the deadline can make you somehow successful, is in fact trapping you in being subject to a construct. You're then a victim of this construct. You're not right by yourself without that deadline, without that thing outside you that defines. As opposed to, I'm always right. And it doesn't matter what day the laundry's done. It doesn't matter. Nothing. I'm right. What I am is right. And then now, what do I choose to express of me? Does that make sense? Yeah. It's a heavy one, isn't it? We like to make this stuff up. And we like to build the construct that suits the conform program. Because that's what we've been taught. We are not, like, it's not like when you're a little girl, people say, well, now, what do you feel like? And that's the right thing to do. People say, you should do this and this and this and this. Here's how you are a right person. And you learn to be that. Thank you. Yes. So then the other piece, and again, this is the, it's how do you allow yourself to step into that wholeness with your spirit? And a huge part of this is, yeah, that would feel too right. Like then I'm saying I'm right and I belong in this wholeness with spirit. It's like lists. I like to make lists to organize my thoughts, and I had to really work at like letting go of the idea of giving my power to the list. Do you know what I mean? Because when you make a list, it implies that you're supposed to conform to the list. Well, no. It's okay to make a list to gather your thoughts. It's not okay if the list is dictating what you should do. You know? It's like, okay, now that I've gathered my thoughts, burn it. If it has power over you, if it has influence, it's not okay, right? It's a separation from your ability to feel what you want and connect with yourself and what's going on with you. Because you're literally giving authority to the list. How are we doing? So, lists as an expression? Absolutely. Lists as a requirement? Not so good. Yeah. Right? Because then, again, you're still in choice, right? It's like, yeah. And always with a, like, and something else, a question mark or whatever to say. And there's also whatever that might not be on the list. Right?
Milan had a question. What do I think this relates, why do I think this relates to me big time?
Well, because you're here. So it's all for you. Everything is for you. Just like everybody else is the same. It's all for them too. And, that's the power of this stuff. I love that. So what, can everybody step in now? So spring is about stepping into the new. And by default, if you step into the new, you're leaving something behind. So there's a grief there. So it's interesting because the grief occurs when you feel like you've lost an option. So if you think you start out at point A and you're headed for some other point, wherever it is you're going, whatever choice you make, you're going to a point B, whatever that is. The thing is, the moment you make that decision and go to point B, you've eliminated all the other possibilities. So if you decide to have coffee, then you're not having milk or juice or tea or whatever because you've had the coffee. That opportunity to have something else is now gone. If you're congruent with the choice you made, whatever that was, you're fine. If you're conflicted, if you thought, well, maybe I should have had milk, It's better for your bones. If you think that, then you have to grieve the loss of that possibility. And there are so many places in life where, we make a choice and it isn't clean. It wasn't a clean choice because maybe we shoulda, coulda, woulda, or maybe we're not sure if we did the right thing. So there's always, when you're trying to shift into the new, there's always going to be grieving. And it's just acknowledging the price of your choice. The price of your choice is the potentials that are eliminated by making that choice. Right? Whatever you do, whatever B is, you've eliminated these other potentials. That is the price of the choice. Doesn't make it wrong. It is still a price, and that's the truth, How are we doing? Can we still step in? Lots of people are in now. What's that? A few more there. Oh, we haven't done that one in a while. Okay, so there's some people who are afraid to step into that light because so many people are not connected to the light. And it's almost like if you go in the light, and what if you're the only one who's in the light? You'll be there all by yourself. That's interesting. We haven't done that one in a while. So the interesting thing is the true connection to others is through the soul, because everybody has a soul. So, you can feel a connection to people that you love or people that you're close to or you care about. Some person you've never met who, I don't know, lives in Timbuktu, you have a connection to them because they have a soul and you have a soul. Somebody who's an axe murderer who you never, please never spend time with, really. There's still that soul connection. And that connection through the soul is independent of time, it's independent of circumstances, it's independent of feelings or stories or, whatever issues go on between people. And so, that's what Namaste is about. Namaste is, I see the soul in you, one. It's recognizing that there's more to the connection of people than any interaction or story that goes on between them. So it's about recognizing and allowing yourself to say, sure, there's stories. Somebody could be a relative, somebody could be a friend, somebody could be, coworker, whatever. And that story creates its own connection. The thing is, there's also your spirit, which goes beyond that, beyond time, beyond even this lifetime. And if you allow yourself to know that, you can never be alone in that place. It's impossible. Right? Now, what's interesting is we avoid that feeling of connection. We avoid it because we're preoccupied with playing the game of the stories, the game of feelings and the game of interaction and who said what and what they did and whether they brought cupcakes. There's all the stories, and we are entertained by that. And that's the experience that we seek. We're here to have an experience of ourselves. So that the cupcakes and the who said what is the experience part. So there is a part of us that it's almost like you do a disconnect from the spirit part, because it's almost like it would make it too easy. Because then why would cupcakes be relevant? Really. It's an interesting thing, because I find that the more I'm connected with my spirit, the more the cupcakes become precious, because they're an expression. They're not just a story. They're an expression of your spirit. So where people expect that, if you have a connection with your soul, that's really deep and cupcakes are irrelevant. Well, it's actually the opposite. I find if you have a connection with your soul, then the cupcakes become the song of your soul. And whatever's going on, good, pain or joy, whatever's going on, it is the song of your soul. And so is it more poignant? Is it more meaningful? I don't know, whatever you want to call that. when you let go of that disconnect, everything matters. Everything. And whether you choose coffee or tea matters, because it's the expression, it's the currency. You're spending the currency of your life. So you give yourself that worth, right? It doesn't make it serious. Like, I don't find it makes it serious. I find it makes it precious, right? That's better. Get everybody? Yeah, okay. All right, so allow yourself to stand in that light, and now just breathe with that for a while. And feel it in your tissue, and feel it in your energy, feel it in your bones and your breath. Just kind of be with that. So some of you have done individual karma clearing and some of you haven't. So I'm going to talk a little bit about, we've done the bulk stuff, which is, using the bean and using timeline and things like that. I want to talk a little bit about individual because we're going to do some of that, apparently. Typically what I do is if I'm working with someone that's specifically clear karma, so that I have a little bit of a different take on karma. My perception of karma is that it's a belief that was formed. So if I look at a person to see, kind of that spirit part of them, it almost looks like an electric field. And when they form a belief, it's almost like a wire gets added. It changes the song, it changes the frequency, and it expresses. And it's not, it's not a good or bad thing. It just is, right? So I've seen people who, they form beliefs about, I don't know, their role, or they form beliefs about money or relationships or whatever, and it will play out. It's because it's almost like that wire sings the song, and therefore it plays out life to life or whatever. And so releasing karma is about finding that belief and releasing the belief. Typically what we'll do is, find wherever it was that the belief originated, like get a clear understanding of, okay, what needs to shift here? What's the actual belief that we're letting go of? What truth needs to go into the heart? And so then because it's still your spirit, you can take that belief and literally install it in the heart, and then it'll ripple through all of time. Because are you holding that belief or are you letting it go? And I think typically it's a belief like, it'll be, the corny stuff, you're not good enough, and like, are you willing to let that go? Or you can never do enough, like, are you willing to let that go? And are you willing to hold a truth of that and bring it everywhere, if you will? So I'm kind of plucking them out of the ether based on what's being presented to me from the group. So I see one which is, so this is a little girl who's an orphan. And she's been brought to some kind of temple because that's where they bring the orphans. And so because she's been raised in this temple, she believes that she should serve in the temple. It's some kind of religious temple. Doesn't matter actually what kind. It's her percent, like it's almost like this is her home. This is like the Sound of Music, for pity's sake, right? You remember Sound of Music? She was raised by the nuns and she thought she should be a nun. And
That's an analogy to being part of a family. You believe you should serve your family. Same thing, isn't it?
good one, Judy. Right? You see? So think about that. If you were talking to this little girl and she's saying, well, no, basically I have to be a nun or I have to be part of this temple because they raised me, this is my family. It means she can't see past that. She can't see that there are other options. It doesn't even exist in her world because this is her family. Why would she leave it? right? So if you knew her and saw her, it isn't whether she should be a nun or not. It's you can't make a choice if you don't know what your choices are. If I say, here's a piece of paper, you can have all of this pieces. Here's one piece of paper. You can choose all of the papers from this one. That's not really a choice, right? And so because she can't see a choice, she can't make a choice. She only sees one option. That's not a choice. Think about what would you say to her? What would you want her to know about possibilities? What would you want her to understand? I mean, maybe she should have some experiences, and then from that broader perspective, she may still want to come and be in the temple, but at least then it's coming from the right place. It's coming from that place of having a choice. Or maybe she might decide to do something completely different. Who knows? Be a professional mountain climber. Who knows? What would you want to say to her? What could you say that would help her be willing to consider that other options exist? Because for her world is really small, right? She's probably terrified at the idea of going somewhere else. And if she was an orphaned, she'd already lost one family, so that would make it even more terrifying to leave. Because she'd had this loss. Then these guys gave her sanctuary. Wouldn't it be even more terrifying, the idea of losing that again? What would you want her to know? Yeah, that's a nice one. The sanctuary could follow her. So if you think because you understand all these choices exist, you weren't raised in this little temple after being orphaned, you can see she has all kinds of choices. You know that. Know how to tell her. I think it means travel. Yep, I think it means travel. Like, you can't see the forest for the trees. Well, she can't see past the trees, right? And for her, there's nothing except the trees. So she would have to go far enough to recognize that there's more than trees. Subconscious is really literal. So if you know, do you know that there are other choices? And feel that knowing, and imagine you can take that knowing and put it in a ball of light and put it right into her heart. Because it's not about her understanding, it's about knowing. It's about her being able to feel that as a truth. And then she can decide what to do with it. Take the knowing and give it to her. And then if you like, you can slide forward, 10 or 20 years and see what does she do. And you'll get different stories. Each of you will get different stories because you all have this piece. It'll go different places because each of your girl is a different girl, What did she do? What did she discover? Now slide forward like another 20 years. And then ask her what gifts and wisdom that she has that she can give to you. So what does she know that she can give to you? And remember, if you accept a knowing from someone, basically you want it to be a clean thing, not part of her identity, right? So it's just a pure knowing. What knowing can she give to you? Do you want that knowing? And if you do, allow her to put it in your heart. Pure and in your heart. Some cool stuff there, ladies. So she let yours left and went past the trees, right? That was the mountain climbing part. Right? That's how you get above the trees, right? Unless you're flying. Yeah. So she literally went up the mountain. And she went past that. So she got to the ocean. So she ended up on a ship and was fascinated by this idea that she's fascinated by the idea that oceans and things can exist. And the knowing that she gave you, if you choose to accept it, is there's always more to discover. And even when you think you know, there's more to discover. Things that are, wonder exists. She's trying to give you the sense of wonder.
I think mine was love, but it was like it was just she was giving me a gift of love.
Nice. So one of the beauties of love is truly valuing a person's unique identity, right? Truly. And so the whole point of her escaping this limit, she could only see one choice. Well, how can she make a choice? She doesn't even know other choices exist. She's only had this very small life, so she doesn't even, how would she even know what she wants? How does she know what she is, right? So she would have to go have some experiences to even discover what she is, right? She needs to meet some tall people and short people so she can, have new experiences of herself, right? And so that is about love. It's about discovering, what is unique, what is distinct. When you say you love someone, you can say that in a, okay, love the people. Well, if you say you love the people, they're not individuals. That's not the same as saying, I see who you are and I love that. This is what is unique to you. You are special. I love you because of who you are. Right? I remember years ago, I said something to, I think Andrew was a teenager, right? I love you. And he said, yeah, but that's just because I'm your son. Like, you have to love me. You're stuck with it. And we had to have this big discussion about who he is, and that I had to establish that I could see him. You're not just my son, you're a person and I see who you are. And that was really important. And I think it's so easy, especially when you're dealing with just people, people you like, especially your kids, or, your partner or someone like that, or your siblings even. You won't necessarily say those things that you see that are unique about them, because it's kind of like fish in water. You don't realize it's wet, So it's part of the fabric. You don't realize it or notice it, So how do you get a step back and say, well, who is this person? Sometimes you can get a step back if you say, well, what archetype are they? Or what animal are they like? And that's what that's doing, is giving you a place to consider from, to evaluate from. Well, they're like this, but they're not like that. They're like this and they aren't like that. So if you have a benchmark like an archetype or an animal, you could say yes to this trait, no to that trait. And that gives you a way to see the traits, that, as opposed to, well, yeah, but they're just who they are, Well, how can you articulate that to them? How can you show them that you see who they are, unless you can articulate it, right? How do you know yourself that way? Right? How do you know who you are compared to? And so that's why when you do this kind of work, you're saying, well, oh, is it this or is it that, or is it, that's the power of mirroring. It allows you to see yourself in other things. in Florida, we spent some time in RV parks that were for seniors, and a lot of these people are down there. They're down there 6 months of the year, and they're retired, and the highlight of their life is playing bingo on Wednesday night. That's not enough life for me, you know. And I wondered, like, okay, 30 years from now, will it be enough life for me? I don't know, because I doubt it, you know. I can certainly see that it would be really easy to make your life really small. And for many people, their lives are small anyway, you know, so they go from a small life and like they haven't lost anything because their life was small anyway. So this is so not a big enough life for me. I need much more, I don't know, discovery into the, but I mean, I can do that inside my own head. It's not like I got to go somewhere. It's the exploration and the wonder. We're back to wonder again. So part of understanding how to love yourself is being willing to know what that is about you. It's easier to do it for somebody else. So we say, okay, start out by doing it for somebody you care about, your partner or your kid or your friend or, you know, and look at them and go, okay, what could I identify and then articulate about them that shows them I see who they really are? And then when you feel like, okay, I understand how this works, I understand how this feels, now look in the mirror and say, what can I say about me? What can I articulate about me? So that I can see who I really am. That's what the love is about, Judy. That's cool. So now while you're in that light, use that light that you're breathing to just integrate that shift so it's easy on your body and easy on your energy. And, you know, flush anything that needs to go. It's funny because I knew we were going to work on persecution energy, like that kind of clearing persecution karma. It would never occur to me to say, here's a child who can't see a choice and call that persecution. And yet it makes sense that it is, right? Because it's persecution is really somebody imposing their requirements on you, right? If you think about it, whether they're calling you wrong or forcing you to do something, they're saying it's going to be my way, regardless of who you might be, you know. And so this child who's in this temple life and can't see past it has been bound by the structure of the temple. And that may not be intentional. You know, there may be people here at the temple who wouldn't wish that on her. But the thing is, their own belief system and their own perception of the temple as the right choice, it's like they would impose it without even knowing they were imposing it. Does that make sense? They wouldn't even realize they did it. It would be like the fish saying, well, yeah, of course you want to be underwater. Where else would you be? You know, like they wouldn't even realize that this might not make sense for somebody else. Okay, next one. Okay, this one's male. So my first thought was he's a teenager. I think this is like based on like what I see of the clothes and stuff. Most specifically, I see a cart with the wheels are made of wood, so I think it's medieval time. And so what we would call a teenager in medieval times is probably an adult and has 3 kids, right? So perhaps young man is a better term. Certainly he thinks of himself as an adult. He thinks of himself as, I think he does have a couple of kids. All right, so what's happening? So some some rule has changed, and he feels that that change of rule has the simple statement would be broken his ability to protect his family. Right? So he's determined that he's not following this new rule. He's not alone. I can see, other people basically want to protest. And he's literally got a pitchfork. How cliche is that? All right, so there's a bunch of villagers. They have things like pitchforks and scythes and wooden clubs, and they're protesting. They have torches, and they're gathered to protest to whoever. It's probably a sheriff or something. The guy who's there to follow, like the new rule was announced. This guy's back to basically reinforce this is the new rule, and they're all saying, "Screw you! You're breaking our lives." And they feel absolutely right in their protest, and they feel like they will be heard, and I can see soldiers just come in and ride right over them. Well, so some of them are killed, some of them are hurt. This guy, I can see like his leg gets broken, and in those days, I got to tell you, a broken leg could kill you. Not least because they wouldn't know how to set it properly. Like if somebody was smart enough to tie it up, like they wouldn't know what a splint was. He'd probably end up crippled for the rest of his life because the bone wouldn't knit properly. And all of them feel absolutely shocked that this was done to them. So, like I think of that, I think I wouldn't be surprised if that happened. I watched Robin Hood. I expect them to be mistreated. But I have a TV and they don't. So unless they saw it in their lifetime or it was part of the stories of their local village, they wouldn't know. And they don't travel. Like these people don't travel. They grow up in the same village. And the closest thing they have to news is if a minstrel comes through and tells them stories, right? So the protest, which was righteous, resulted in complete abuse, and they feel so shocked and horrified that this happened, and now they feel it's like they don't know how the world works, because I guess whatever the change of rule was, like I suspect it was like the old lord must have died or something, and somebody new came along and wasn't very nice. The old guy must have been nicer. Whatever the change of rule was, they don't know how to be successful, right? They thought life worked a certain way. Clearly that's not how it worked. Now they've been damaged by that. Some of them were killed, but some of them were damaged. So they don't know how to be safe, and they don't know how to be successful. So they're just terrified. So remember, when you do this kind of stuff, you're outside time. So you can think about, what would you want to say to this guy and when would you want to say it? Like I would think you might want to go back to before the confrontation and give him some advice, And it isn't necessarily like hide. It isn't necessarily that. It might be, let's get the lay of the land before you choose how you're going to act. You don't know this guy. He's already done weird things that you didn't expect. Like, why not evaluate before you, look before you leap kind of thing. So think about that. Or, depending on how you feel about it, you might want to say, if you're going to fight, you need to be more vicious so that they don't slaughter you, you slaughter them. I don't imagine that would go well because they just bring more soldiers. Now, mind you, medieval times, their idea of a big fight was, 6 guys. The thing about the soldiers is they tend to be trained and have weapons and things like horses. So it was really easy for them to overpower a population like this. So if these guys organized and decided to fight, they could beat them. It's not impossible, right? You kind of have to decide for yourself what feels right. You know, what feels right in terms of handling this. This guy is naive. You know, he doesn't know anything beyond the village he grew up in. The only experience he has is, you know, what he was taught by his family in his village. And so he really can't anticipate this. So he has no skills for for anticipating it, no skills for dealing with it when it does happen. So what would you want him to know? Think about what you know that you would want to give to him. Also think about what you know about mob mentality, because some of that is in play. You know, they riled each other up and were braver together than they might have been apart. So think about what knowing you want to give him, and keep it independent of story. So it has to be a pure knowing. This is a sandbagging one too, isn't it? Yeah. Aside from persecution, it's also because he didn't see it coming at all. And then when you feel like you've given him the knowing, slide forward, you know, in time. So try 20 years and check and see, you know, what's going on with him. And is there something that he knows that might be good for you? Everybody's got different stories. I mean, some of them he turned into Robin Hood. Some of them he was a hothead and didn't listen. So, you know, he got hurt anyway. Some of them he was able to watch, and in some he was able to step back and watch and not get in trouble, and in some he was able to talk some of his friends into calming down, and in some he couldn't. So check and see, is there knowing? And remember to keep it pure so that you're not taking on his stuff. What knowing can he give you? For some of them, it's choose your effect. So for some of them, because he was wiser and because he saw what happened if you weren't wise, he was able to say, you know, like what they were doing was ranting and they were acting from temper. And that would have caused them to get hurt. So because he didn't, you know, in the ones where he didn't rant and act from temper, he was able to act more from wisdom and to learn from that. So it's literally, you know, don't be run by reactions, if you will. In some of them where he was able to step back, but he could not convince people like other people were reacting, you know, he felt frustrated by that. And he had to learn about influence. So he became a kind of a village headman sort of thing because he wanted to be able to have more influence. Which is interesting because it gave him an ambition he wouldn't have had otherwise. And status in the village that he wouldn't have had otherwise. In the ones where he was able to talk some people out of, you know, getting in trouble, it gave him status. And almost universally, like I think the guy who became the new Lord or whatever, he was not a very nice person. But in all of them, it helped them in, you know, come out of that better than they would have, if you will. So there was a sense that the wisdom paid off. Yeah, because if they were rebels, they would burn the village. Yeah, just they destroyed the whole village. And that would be an example so that the next village wouldn't fight. Right? In those days, if somebody was a thief, they'd cut off their hand. And that was so that everybody would say, well, let's not do that. Even if they were starving, they wouldn't steal a loaf of bread because they'd get their hand cut off. A whole new meaning to ruthless. Right?
There's never anything on the good side that was anywhere near that.
No. Not reward, no. Peasants.
So your friend says she feels this in her bones.
Yes, because it's an immutable belief. So think about what that means. It means you're carrying an immutable belief, that if you act from emotion, that you're not only will you get damaged, but everything will get destroyed. And the lesson that you're trying to learn is to be able to take a step back and use strategy, have a broader perspective, see sort of a longer term than that first lashing out from emotion. The thing is, you still need to know what you're feeling. You need to know what that is and honor it. And then choose your behavior. So it's allowing that, knowing that you've been given about, the wisdom of the wisdom, if you will, and allowing that to go through all of your energy and all of your tissue, and use that spirit light to integrate it, and through all of your being, through time and across time. So through time and across time, allow the light, that spirit light, to bring it all the way through. Of course, the minute you get up, you might want to turn it off, because they probably phone back. That's what happens. So there's lots of grief with this one. So there's, we've all had lifetimes of you can't fight City Hall, and you fought the good fight, and then there was no reward, that kind of thing. So this one is, this boy is learning how to not get himself in trouble by just, acting from emotion. The thing is, it does not give him any power over this guy who's the Lord. So he's got to be strategic. He's still going to get taxed. He's probably still going to get abused. It's the reality of that is understanding your territory. Your capacity to impose effect depends on your territory. So in some of them, I saw that, what he figured out, I better have more influence, and he grew his own influence in the village so that he could affect more people's behavior. He could affect more outcomes. So the more you grow your influence, the more you have the ability to influence effect. The problem is that comes with responsibility. And so this is why people tend to, they want the ability to have the effect. They don't want the responsibility that goes with it, right? Because if you become the village headman, then you have that job and you have all that goes with it. And so it's understanding what is right for you in terms of territory. When you define your territory, what you're doing is saying, this is where I impose my effect. Right? This is where I choose to have to basically work at getting the effect I want. It might never be outside your own house. That's up to you. You might decide to, be prime minister. That's up to you. The thing is, regardless of where you aim in terms of having influence, you have to tell the truth about territory to understand, like you can't have more influence without growing your territory. That's the only way it works. I mean, you can stand on a soapbox downtown and tell everybody what you think, and they can think you're crazy. So, if you want to actually have people hear you, it's about, what is that soapbox made of? Right? What do you use to get the status that will have your voice be heard? What matters to you? How much does it matter to you? Where do you need your voice heard? What do you need heard? Are you willing to take on having that influence? Right? So, in the same way this boy, picked up his pitchfork and decided he was going to give him what for and tell him, what you're doing is wrong. Here I am with my pitchfork and I'm going to shake it at you. He didn't have the influence to have the effect he wanted to have. But he didn't know that. He was just mad. And so it's important for you to recognize that he's given you the wisdom to say, step back, understand. If you're acting from emotion, you're not acting strategically. Now take it a step further, which is understanding influence and effect. If you want to ensure the effect that you want, then grow your influence. If you want to grow your influence, grow your territory. Growing your territory is about responsibility. Yes? Yeah, it didn't help, right? Yeah, talk about shooting yourself in the foot. Interesting, right? One of the things the Romans would do is they would salt the fields of anybody who fought. So if people surrendered and just accepted their rule, then they'd be fine. They'd put somebody in charge of the whatever, and they'd collect taxes. But effectively life went on. But if they fought, they would salt the fields and they'd all starve. I mean, it's not like they could go to Sobeys or whatever, right? It's like, if their crop was destroyed, they were going to die. It was really that simple. And it was a harsher way to die than getting killed in the original fighting, right?
Maurice asks for you guys to repeat that again for her.
Okay. I'm checking to see what we've... Okay. So, the two sides, I think it's the influence effect, so I'm going back to that step.
The grow part.
Yeah, to grow your influence. So, a lot of times our frustration comes from we want to have a specific effect, whatever that effect is. We want to make people happy, or have a nice dinner, or we want what we want, right? We want to have the effect we want. Your capacity to get the effect you want depends on your influence. If you want to grow your capacity to get the effect you want, you need to grow your influence. If you're going to grow your influence, you have to grow your territory. If you don't grow your territory, you cannot grow your influence. Right? So if the story I said, if you go downtown and stand yourself on a soapbox and tell everybody what you think, they're probably not going to listen. So understanding, stepping up on a soapbox to have your say isn't giving yourself influence. You have to understand what actually gives you influence. You have to be willing to take responsibility, because growing your territory, growing your influence, requires taking responsibility. So Estrella said, the flip side of this was the guy who burned the villages also destroyed part of his income, so he hurt himself. And I said that was a standard Roman army thing. That, if they cooperated, they just got taxed. If they didn't cooperate, their fields were salted, nothing would grow, they would starve to death. So it's one thing to comprehend that if you act from emotion, you're not being strategic, so who knows what's going to happen. It could go badly. Acting strategically includes telling the truth about influence and effect. The whole point of acting strategically is that you're trying to achieve a specific effect. Your capacity to achieve the specific effect depends on your influence, depends on your territory, depends on you taking responsibility. We don't like that at all. And that makes sense.
Julie's saying also, she said her liver is having a serious reaction. She assumes that that's about expanding territory and feeling rage.
So the rage part is absolutely true. What it feels like is you have a perception that if you try to expand your territory, people are going to hurt you. That's what the rage is about. So what that comes down to is, if you step back and tell the truth about influence, like if you just try to expand your territory, I want more, well, the more you want, somebody else has already claimed. So of course they're going to fight you. Of course they're going to fight you. So that means that you have to tell the truth about their influence and your influence, because if you want more, you have to be willing to grow your influence so they can't stop you.
A question might be, why is it a zero-sum game?
It isn't.
Okay.
It isn't.
Our perception is that it is?
Our perception is that it is. And that's a good question. So Mackie's saying, why do I have to be taking territory from somebody else? You're not. And in fact, you can't. You cannot take somebody's territory. The thing is, they may perceive it that way, and you may perceive it that way, and you've certainly been trained. You've been trained to, not tread on anybody's toes, to be nice to everybody, and certainly not to take things that, you're not entitled to, and you're probably not entitled to anything, if you think about it, right? You could say, well, I'm entitled to the pay for my job. Really? I mean, really? Do you really feel that that's truly yours, or do you feel not good enough? Right? You get the pay, but really you should do more. Or you get the pay and really it's you're not good enough and this is not good enough and the pay is not good enough. And how many not good enoughs are in that, right? How many false deadlines and ways to call yourself wrong exist in that structure? So truly, like if you think, how easy is it to imagine taking? Can you imagine taking what you want regardless, without considering who you might be taking it from, or how they might react? Like if you think about taking without, just think about I'm just going to take regardless, and how does that feel? Not real comfortable, right? Because you immediately go, well, who am I taking it from, and what will they do, and how will they feel, and what if I hurt somebody, and and what if they get mad at me? And so we have all kinds of issues about taking, and the fun part is they will block righteous taking just as much as they would block what might be considered abusive taking, right? All right, so breathe in that light and think about what you would like to teach yourself about taking. Because Here's the thing you know about abundance. You can't take from somebody else. Doesn't work that way. They may perceive it as you taking it from them. The thing is, that's their story. Right? And they have a reason for having that experience that frankly has nothing to do with you. Now, it is really valuable strategy for you, if you decide to take something, it's valuable strategy for you to be aware of how that would be perceived and what the stories are, so you can choose how to interact with it. Because that's part of being strategic. The thing is, if you automatically think taking is wrong, you can't get to strategic, right? You can't get to choosing to how to interact with the story.
Marie says, I want to teach myself to accept rather than to take.
Ah, yes, but you can't get to accept without going through take, dear. Yeah, it's a lovely idea that you don't want to deal with your fear of taking. However, if you try to skip over that and go to accept, then you're not dealing with those fears, and then they still get to win. So once you've dealt with that fear, then you can choose to accept from love. The thing is, it's the fear of taking, you can't get past that to accept. So it's first you have to be comfortable with taking. That's the villain piece. Like if you think of the victim, villain, hero triangle, personal power is the ability to impose your will. That's what taking is. So in our culture, the minute you try to impose your will, somebody's going to call you wrong. They're going to perceive, you've made a decision. Well, I don't like that. Inevitably, somebody's going to call you wrong. So automatically, the minute you try to impose your will, have your own opinion, have your own identity, you get villainized. And so in order to be true to yourself, to have a balance in that triangle, you have to be comfortable with the taking. You have to be comfortable with being called a villain, and you have to tell the truth that that's their perception. It's your responsibility to observe the effect you have. And, say, is that the effect I want to have? Right? So if you go into the kindergarten class and steal everybody's lunch and they all cry, you're probably not going to feel very good about yourself. Is that the effect you want to have? Well, what if you discovered that all of the lunches were poisoned? Then you're probably okay if they cry, because you just saved all the kids. You have to have the ability to be okay with being villainized so that you can choose, so that options are available. We're back to options being available. See that leak? Click clunk. Okay, so more options become available, and you have the capacity to make the choice. You have the capacity to know what feels right for you. Right? What if you went into the kindergarten class and took all the lunches, and they all cried, and you said, guess what? I took all the lunches because we're bringing in a surprise pizza and cake. The thing is, you can't get there until you're willing to be the villain. And understanding somebody will always call you villain. So as long as you're safe with that being called villain, and even safe with choosing, saying, I'm going to do this thing that feels right to me, and they're going to call me wrong, that's the way it needs to go. You can't get to strategy until you're okay with that. Right? Until you're okay with that. Then you can get to accept. Right? One of the challenges we have is that you can be totally acting from love, and people will still say you're the bad guy. And if you're, quote, trying to do the right thing, you're going to feel devastated by that. And it's about understanding, well, okay, if they're calling me the bad guy, that's theirs. Because my intent was clear. You know, I was doing what felt right. So check and see. Are you willing to be safe being the villain? Are you willing to be comfortable being the villain? And breathe all that in. And as you breathe out, release whatever needs to go. And think of the knowing that you want to bring inside your own heart. What is it that you want to know? You can totally be acting from love and someone can still call you a villain. And the key here is to recognize that, their perception doesn't determine your intent, doesn't make you wrong. And then you have the ability to choose how to interact with that. What do you want to do about that? What effect do you want to have? By default, if it's persecution karma, it means that you had an experience of being victimized. And everything we're doing is about recognizing that you have another choice. Whether it's another choice just even to know a choice exists, whether it's the capacity to be strategic, whether it's the understanding of, they will have a perception, and often it's wise to manage the perception. Because, if somebody sees you go into the kindergarten class and take all the lunches, they're probably going to think you're a bad guy. That may or may not be useful for you. What effect do you want to have? What effect do you want to have? And it's being willing to choose your effect. What truth do you want to know about that? Are you willing to choose your effect? So if you think, what do you know about choosing your effect? What feels like a truth that you can bring into your own heart? And standing in that spirit light, integrated into yourself. And breathe that light. Bring it into all of your cells and all of your energy, right into your bones, right into all of the patterns that define your body, your mind, your spirit. Okay, what's that one? All right, so this is a boy, and he's pushing his little sister on a bicycle, I think, to teach her how to ride a two-wheeler. So there they are, he's running along beside the bike, pushing, 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 then he lets her go. And see, she smacks right into this parked car, damages the bike, damages the car, she got a bloody nose. I don't think it's terrible. I mean, okay, yes, there's damage to the bike and the car, but I don't think it's like she's not hurt badly. And he spent the whole afternoon running up and down with her with this silly bike. And when he finally thought that she had it under control, it smacked right into a car. So, of course, this would be him being villainized because he got the blame for this. She didn't. She's just learning how to ride the bike. So, of course, he's the big brother. He's supposed to be handling this. So, of course, he's wrong because the car got damaged. He's wrong because the bike got damaged. He's wrong because her nose is bleeding. And I imagine she had a few tears. So this is a very good example. I mean, where does his responsibility begin and end? I mean, he was teaching her. Is it his fault she banged into the car? It's possible that she wasn't ready to be let go. Maybe he just got tired and he had enough and he decided that this was enough. Maybe he was right that she was totally capable of riding the bike and she just wasn't paying enough attention because he was taking all the responsibility up until now. Does that mean he didn't impress on her enough that, it was her job to steer now? Where does his responsibility begin and end? Is he the bad guy? A really good question would be, what was his intent? Was his intent to have it over with because he was tired? Was his intent that he really did think that she was capable? So if his intent was clear, that he really did think she was capable, then this was just an accident and frankly not his fault. Then it's about him owning that, letting go of that outcome. If it was like he's just tired and he wants it over with, then he's got restitution to make. And that's how he has to own, like, okay, I made a mistake. I should have stopped and said, that's enough for today. Really, I set her free to go on her own because I was tired, not because she was actually ready. So then he has to own that and decide what does he need to do to feel right about it. Because even if he made a mistake, like, that doesn't mean it can't be fixed. It's what restitution does he need to make him feel right. And the really important thing to remember about restitution is it's not about them, it's about you. What do you need to do so you can feel right? It's not, oh, I need you to forgive me, because that's their story, and who knows what's going on in their head. You can't control that outcome. It's what do you need to do so that you feel okay, that you feel like you've done the right thing, paid whatever dues you need to pay, fix whatever you feel like you need to fix. This would be a hell of a lot harder if she got killed or something. I mean, this one's pretty simple because, she got a bloody nose. Big deal. If he feels wrong and guilty, he'll probably get angry and not be able to comfort her. You know, because really what she needs is for him to pick her up and comfort her and make sure she's okay and take the bike back and deal with deal with what's happened. And if he's a mess, and wrapped up in his own guilt and stuff, he's not going to be able to do that, or he certainly won't do it well. So think about, what would you want to tell this guy? What do you know about this situation? What wisdom do you have that you would like to give into his heart? Yep. 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 And maybe it was. The thing is, if it's his territory to teach her to ride the bike, it's his territory to call a halt too. Like part of having something in your territory is to tell the truth about the resources. So if he's tired, he needs to say, I'm tired, that's enough for today. That's part of, if it's in his territory, then understanding what the resources are is part of it, being in the territory. If it's not in his territory, then he shouldn't be out there, right? Exactly. Yeah. Hold on. Well, if he's letting her go, then he's saying, now you're driving the bike. Now it's up to you to successfully steer and ride and all those things. Yeah, she was having a lot of fun having her brother chase her around. Yeah. Yeah. So basically, one of the things I said is perhaps what he missed was he didn't make it clear enough to her. It's now your job, right? And that's the key. That's the part that he needs to understand. Because she was having a good time having all this attention and stuff. Yeah.
I was sort of along that wavelength. I didn't know if I was overthinking it. I sort of thought it might be about his either pain, fear, or adventure threshold versus hers.
Yes.
Not even so much having to do with the age thing, although that would be, but sort of a
Yep.
gender thing and stuff too.
Yep. So maybe he thinks riding the bike is exciting and she thinks it's terrifying.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even from the very beginning.
Yep.
But yeah, how would they communicate that to one another?
And he may not even be willing or able to hear it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Recognize it's a thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you know that you would like to give this guy? Is part of what is part of a compassion to see she has a different perspective. She's just a little girl, maybe she's afraid. If that doesn't even enter his reality, how could he have compassion? If he doesn't understand her perspective, then how can he transfer the responsibility? And with the territory thing, if he's going to make himself responsible for this, then he needs to tell the truth about the resources too, which is, you're tired, call it a day.
And so from her perspective, if he's saying this is your responsibility, and she's saying no. So if it's his territory, then
He needs to say, we're done now.
okay, then but if it's not his territory, he's like, okay.
Well,
I should be doing this at all.
so if he can either, so if she says, I'm not willing to take responsibility for riding the bike, then he has to either decide, I'm tired, call it quits, we'll try this another day, and then it's up to him to figure out, what he wants to do with that interaction, okay? Or if he's saying, well, then if you don't want responsibility, then why am I here, and call it quits. He may say, well, you're just afraid, I can help you with that. It depends, right? It could be. And it's up to him whether he wants to try and influence that or not, right? Part of the territory thing is, what effect does he want to have? Why does he, like you said, why does he want to ride the bike, And it could be he likes riding a bike and he wants to give that to her. It could be that his father said, you do that, like who knows, right? You can ask. The key is, what do you want to give him? What knowing do you want to give him? Right? I think it's a huge thing for him to be able to say, well, I'm tired now, that's enough for today. Because how often do we not do that? How often do we have some goal and we'll beat ourselves into the ground thinking it has to happen a certain way because you visualized it, that you're not even taking into account something could change. Like, I'm out of stamina now. I chased this bike all afternoon.
Well, and I think the word maturity just came into my mind, and yet maturity we think is something that comes with age, but maybe that's what we could give him.
Yep. And is it age or is it perspective? It's the capacity to tell the truth about what's going on, to tell the
do all of that, but it's not an age thing.
Right. It's a wisdom thing.
It's a wisdom thing. Yeah.
Right?
Which he can access. Nothing says he can't access.
Exactly. So think about what knowing you want to give him. Put that into his heart. And then slide forward 20 years and see how that has shaped him. Or see, what wisdom does he have to offer you? Because if somebody's been given a gift of wisdom at such a young age, that might have quite a remarkable effect on their future. I think if you're willing to accept gifts from him, make sure they're clean so that it's a knowing without a story. Lots of different ones. That's kind of cool. Use your breath, breathing it all the way through, into your cells, into your energy, through time and across time, flushing whatever needs to go. Lots of wisdom gifts, that's lovely. Okay, next one. So one of the territory things Andrew talks about in Vulnerable is he's saying, when someone feels like you're taking their emotional energy, basically they'll attack you. So one example of that is, if you see the Save the Children commercial on TV, a lot of people, their immediate reaction to that is to be pissed off. They just steal your money, it doesn't even make it to the kid, or just change the channel. Why do they put that guy, stuff on TV? People get angry. And the reason they're angry is because this commercial is designed to invoke your compassion, and this child is not in your territory. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Right. And I mean, you can decide. I mean, you could decide to have a foster child or whatever and say, I'm putting this child in my territory. You can do that. The thing is, the whole point of the commercial is to try and impose that emotional intimacy on you. And that's where the anger comes from. That's because it's a defense. They're basically trying to steal your emotional territory and impose it, impose their demand on you. So that can happen with if people ask you for sympathy. I mean, sure, they can ask for sympathy. The thing is, they're taking your emotional energy. If they confide, there was a ding. If they confide in you, they're taking your emotional energy, right? If they ask you for things that are basically they're not entitled to, they're taking your emotional energy. Now, lots of people will try to do that. Like, think about it. That's why you get angry at homeless people. If they come up and ask you for money or something, it's because they're using their desperation to try and claim your territory, to claim resources from you. This person's not in your territory. And that's why people get angry at them. Anger is the defensive form of fear. Anger is the defensive form of fear. If you're angry, it means you're afraid. Okay? I'm still angry, right?
Why is that successful, though, from the compassionate child facing anger?
Why is it?
Yeah, because people are putting money then to make themselves feel better.
Mm-hmm. And part of it is, like, they might give money to, like, dismiss this away from them. Like, stop taking my emotional energy. I'll give you money instead. To negate the claim. Here's $5. Now I don't have to feel bad about you anymore.
It gets rid of the guilt.
Right? And it's saying, here's the amount of responsibility I'm willing to take. That's it. Now I'm done. So it's a way to define a boundary. Right? It's probably. It's probably. Some people have decisions. I mean, I know somebody who they collect those McDonald's cards and put the stickers on and they hand them out to homeless people. That's the decision they've made. This is the choice, because if you're not reacting, you can be strategic. And this is what they've said. Like, this basically costs me nothing. This is my choice about how I feel right. Other people do give money. I know people who, every time they see a homeless person, they give them $5. That's the choice they've made. The thing is, because it's coming from choice, they can feel right. They're not giving them $100. They're saying, this is what I do that makes me feel right.
But the way that you're saying that the spelling of the feeling is
Right?
the reaction.
That's the reaction part. When they're saying, I just want this to go away. Like, that's coming from a fear. Right? So, fundamentally, the reaction occurs because your boundaries are not clear. You don't know the edge of your territory. If you understand, like, this person's not my territory, then it's really easy to feel right not giving them $5, unless you've decided to give them $5. Like, you have to decide what that is. The thing is, if you said, no, I don't give money to homeless people because they're not in my territory, so they don't get my resources, or you might say, here's how I interact with it. Whatever you choose. The bottom line is you're not reaction, you're in choice. And the whole night has been about seeing the choices, being able to be strategic, recognizing what you're feeling and being able to release the triggers so that you can be. Right? Comfort yourself for your emotion. Grieve when you need to grieve. Get to the point of strategy. Get to the point of choice. Right? Doesn't mean you don't feel. You're going to feel. I mean, they put a lot of money and effort into making you respond to those Save the Children commercials. It works. It works. Like, they show you those kids, you're going to respond. Like, how could you not? And so tell the truth that hurts, and then decide, what do I want to do about that? You know, I could take a moment and grieve, feel sad for those kids, or I can send them some money, or whatever. You have to decide what feels right for you. You know, what feels right for you. If you're busy reacting, you're not going to get to that. Right?
So it's really interesting because I've been reacting to CBC's been doing a lot of stories about natives and their challenges, and they've had
They don't have clean water, and it's just horrendous.
They're telling their stories, and I've been feeling like, oh, you're such a victim, but it's the reaction. So,
Right.
and I've been frustrated at CBC. Why are you doing this? So interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's, what do you need to feel right inside? What do you need? Okay. And then understanding territory. If you say, well, okay, I want that fixed. Like, that doesn't feel good to me. I want it fixed. Well, then you have to grow your influence so you can get the effect you want. Right? Because if it ain't going to be fixed by $5, you need more influence. It's that, right? It's understanding. Is this your fight? You know?
The other thing that's particularly tough in the native one is that we can't make people happy.
That's right.
One cannot make somebody else happy. So much of that debate, and I live with this quite a lot, is it's a he said, she said.
Yep.
I had huge respect for that senator who got up to say it wasn't all bad,
Mm-hmm.
because I believe that to be the case, and that's not what everybody wants to hear.
Well, and so now we go back to what people do is they play the victim card for the same reason that the Save the Children commercial works. Because it makes you feel bad, makes you feel guilty, and it makes you give outside your territory, right?
It makes you
Give outside your territory, right?
Okay.
So then the question becomes, if you know what your territory is and you're very clear on that, do you want to have an effect in this situation, right? Where do you want to apply your effect? Because the bottom line is, if you use your effect for this, then you're not using it for that. And so you have to decide. What is your flag? What is your drum? What is your cause?
And what's your objective?
What effect do you want to have?
Yeah, without being
Emotionally blackmailed,
and involved in the outcome.
right? And letting go of the outcome.
Yeah. Okay.
Let go of the outcome. Yeah. So I remember somebody I knew for years who did massive energy work. She told me a story. She said, I was at this event, and I ended up, she said, sitting at a table with all of these native elders, and she's like, okay, And so she said, you guys have sweat lodges and you have healing ceremonies and all of that stuff. And there was some speaker was talking about the residential schools and all that abuse. She's like, why haven't you healed this stuff? Why are your people still carrying this? Why? Why would you do that to yourselves? Like, right? And he said, that's a really good question. He's like, what?
They didn't attack her.
Well,
That gives them huge credit, actually.
right? And sometimes it's that. Sometimes it's become the fish in water. They don't even know it's wet. It's so much a part of the normal that nobody even considers that this could be changed. And if they're trained to be victims, the idea that you could do something to not be a victim, like who comes up with that, right? How do you see that from inside victim? Because you don't see the choices. Right? You don't even see the choices.
And perhaps those that have become successful have chosen that that's not their territory anymore.
Well, they get ostracized too, eh?
Oh yeah, no, it's not a popular thing.
Right? And so this whole conflict exists. You're either, this victim state, or you've left, you've abandoned us, right? Stay here and be miserable. Yep, stay here and be miserable with us, or go out there and live the white man's life.
And with
Right.
the victim state and the misery, there actually is no positive outcome possible.
Ever.
Because they're entrenched in it being.
And it becomes their self-image, it becomes their identity, it becomes their right to everything, their entitlement. Yeah, and so they never get a sense of personal power. It's amazing, right? If you
It's not our responsibility to give them any personal power.
Well, we can't.
you can't, it's impossible. Yes. Yes, it is. Right? So it's,
They're not willing to take on the power.
yeah, because the little girl didn't want to ride the bike.
That was, yeah.
Right? Oh, also, all of them, right? It's also that one, because she couldn't see the choices. So yes, all of them. And here's the thing when you do this, is like it all fits together, it's the same piece, right? Like every piece is the same, ka-clunk, 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 right? So what knowing would you like to share? What knowing would you like to give?
I forget their stories now.
Well, the idea is put it in your heart.
Oh, okay.
Let's put it in your heart. I forget too. Isn't that fun? Do we have a story? I don't know how we got to here. The key.
It works though.
Yes? Yeah. Were we in the middle of a...
Oh, we were talking also about the Save the Children.
Yes?
He moved on to 20 years ahead.
Ah! To look for the wisdom. Thank you. See? We can backtrack. People are here. Yes. So we had done the wisdom, and then I said, okay, here's the story, because in Vulnerable he was talking about emotional blackmail and how people will be angry. So here's a thing to recognize. Like, you might decide to talk to someone about a problem, and they will be flippant or critical or something that makes you feel like that wasn't good. And what you need to recognize is that means that they felt that you were emotionally blackmailing them. You know, you were, for whatever reason, you believed it was appropriate to confide in this person or whatever. They didn't. Even if they thought they did, they didn't. You can tell by their reaction. Right? Now, it could be that they actually want to be caring, but you pushed a button or somehow or something. Like, right? So many things could go on. The key is, and you know, the whole point of the book Vulnerable is about telling the truth about their capacity to honor your vulnerability. So if you confide in someone and you know they basically are not nice about it, they have not got the capacity to take responsibility for the vulnerability you have given them. That's on you. That's on you. Because you did not tell the truth about their capacity to protect your vulnerability. So a simple example, if you confide in someone and then they repeat it, you know, they go tell the tale, and you feel all betrayed because you told them in confidence. That's on you, because they do not have the capacity to be responsible with your vulnerability. So why would you give them your vulnerability?
Because you don't have the ability to judge their capacity.
And so your ability, your responsibility is to tell the truth, to discover the truth about their ability to be responsible for your vulnerability. Well, I mean, the bottom line is to know who they are.
Yeah.
Right? Like if somebody's the biggest gossip in town and you confide in them, really? Like seriously? Okay, so that's a simple example. You don't run into trouble with that one. You run into trouble with the person who you believe that you can safely confide in. Why do you believe that? So now if you go back to my definition of trust, trust is when you believe you can predict someone's behavior. This is all about the trust thing, right? It's about you are the one who believed something about them. You believed they would keep their confidence.
What happened to the guy who got trampled? He
Right.
believed that the Lord
Yes.
would save, even if he said his opinion.
Yes. And then he got trampled because the new guy had a different rule, right? Or was establishing his authority or whatever, right? So he wrongly predicted the result.
Which is the wily wisdom of making
Right.
step back, not act in reaction,
And not assume,
and not assume.
right? Don't assume the new guy is going to act like the old guy, right? All of these things. And this is why every single one of these, they all fit together. They're all part of the whole thing. Because in the end, persecution, if you feel persecuted, it's the same as if you feel betrayed, right? It means you were not predicting properly, right?
So I always like to believe the best in somebody. What?
That's totally unfair. It's totally unfair.
Yeah, no, and so what am I hiding from though?
The truth.
I'm hiding from the truth.
You're hiding from knowing who they are.
Okay. Which is also not very respectful of them.
Or loving. It's totally the opposite of loving,
Interesting.
right?
That's very interesting. That thinking everybody's good is the opposite of loving.
Yes. Because when you're loving, you're willing to see who they actually are. Doesn't mean you want to have dinner with them. If you want to expect the best of people, you're not willing to see who they actually are.
I was thinking that exact same thought when you said it, Maggie, but for me it was fairness.
Yes.
Okay.
Right? So I have an expectation people will be fair, and then
That's just not fair. It's not fair.
That's the irony, isn't that interesting?
Isn't it?
Okay, so thinking everyone's good is not respectful
Or loving,
or loving. Okay.
right? So this is peasant mentality. When you're trained, like, oh, you should believe the best about people, pure peasant. Because it sets you up to be a victim. Nobody can live up to that, you know? Because even the nicest Pollyanna person can have a bad day or PMS or, you know. So why do that to them? You know, why not just let them be who they are? If they are who they are, good days, bad days, whatever, if you're willing to see the truth of it, you're interacting with who they are in that moment. That's loving. That's loving.
Can be given or we can accept is that willingness to see the truth in it.
That's it. Unconditional love.
But the
Doesn't mean,
risk seeing the truth in it.
so it doesn't mean you have to like them. It doesn't mean you have to be friends. It's just the ability, it's that compassionate witness. I see you. Right? The avatar thing. I see you. Right? Then you choose how to interact with that. It's like when it's PMS day, husband goes to the garage, right? You know, that's just smart. It's not wrong. It's telling the truth. It's just telling the truth. If you're trying to believe the best of people, you disable your ability to see the truth of them. You disable your ability to choose how to interact with that. I mean, it means you can't comfort them. You can't protect yourself, which forces them into villain. Like, right? Absolutely turns them into an abuser. Wow. And we're back to the personal power, back to choice, seeing options, seeing the truth, taking responsibility, finding all of it. Like da-ding, 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 da-ding. Right?
Whoa, we still have 8 minutes.
So focus on your breath. Think about what you want to put in your own heart. Are you willing to actually engage with people from love instead of from conform programs that put you in victim? Mm. Interesting. Right? What if they are who they are? They are who they are, then you choose how to interact with it. It's okay for them to be that. So it's okay for them to be who they are. It's up to you to decide how to interact with it. Anything else is you trying to impose your values on them. Right? Yeah. Yep. That's it. Breathing it into your cells, into your bones, to all of your energy through time and across time. And then allow that light and that breath to integrate all of these changes. So this becomes your new normal. So that even if you trip or whatever, you come back to this with ease. And that you evolve forward from here. And you guys know that this will process for all sorts of weeks. And things will pop up in your life to illustrate anything that's stuck. And you can notice that, recognize when things are coming up for a reason. And say, oh, this is about that. All right. How many ways can you feel sandbagged? And it's a memo to say, pay attention to this one. Go in and find out what's going on here so that you can release it.
All this guidance to stepping into.
Yes. Yeah. What you can know for sure is you will be given exactly what you need so that you can see what you need to see.
You help me resolve one or two people in my class that irritate me. Not that they're doing anything extra. One is that girl.
Okay. Keep breathing, guys, because this will be relevant.
21-year-old who wants to take your emotional energy. She keeps harping she's the baby and she wants you to emotionally constantly support her. And I'm like, no, but I can't. Even though she's over there.
Well, it's because it's like loud noise.
Yeah.
The fact that, right, it's like she's scratching at your shields, right? Like,
Yeah. Now I get it. So no.
Yes.
There's another fellow, which I can't quite figure out why he's annoying me. He's built big, muscular. He's very scientific-minded, intelligent, you can tell. However, very closed off about emotions and about, we were playing with tarot cards with some other people, and he joked in a,
Yeah.
I'm going to say condescending, right?
Yeah.
Oh, you guys should pull a Ouija board next, kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And so I understand his mindset,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know why it bugs me. Like, I don't want to be paired up with him at all. Not that there's anything wrong with him, other than that he's bugging me, and I don't know why.
Okay, so first of all, you said not that there's anything wrong with him. So hold on. He outright attacked you.
Right. That's just it. From the very first day.
So he outright attacked you. Why would you want someone to touch you who outright attacked you? Like really, seriously. And but you know better. I mean, that's just passive aggressive. He because he's dismissive of the emotional element, that means he's going to bleed his emotional crap through his touch. So why would you want to be exposed to that?
Like, I knew there was a reason, but I'm like, what?
Yeah.
That I need to stay away from
Yeah. So what you might want to think about is, if you have a practice, you could easily get him as a client. Okay? So why not take this opportunity to build your ability to not be hurt by him? Because right now, he can hurt you. You haven't figured out how to do it. Like, first of all, you're saying, well, there's nothing wrong with him. Bullshit! Okay, there's all sorts of things wrong here. He's an active threat. So if you say, well, I should be okay with this, what you're saying is, it should be okay to walk through a parking garage at night. I shouldn't be nervous. Why wouldn't you be nervous? That's silly.
Is this the same thing though as what Mackie and I were saying, is that she's not seeing the truth of what it is?
That's right.
Because
Of course.
we're not actually allowed to not like people.
You're supposed to think the best of them. Well, no, he's an active threat. He attacked you. I mean, very aggressively, frankly. He's making fun of your beliefs, and he's in denial of a whole element of the interaction that would occur. Why would you want to put your hands on someone like that? Why would you ever want them to touch you? Like, really? And I gotta say, like, a massage is pretty intimate. So like why? Like, would you date him? Like, well, and yet it's okay for him to put his hands all over your body. Like, so, yeah, so why would you think you should be okay with it?
I was trying to figure out why I wasn't, and I couldn't see.
Yeah. The reason you couldn't see why you weren't is because you were trying to convince yourself you should be okay. And that's,
You're supposed to not be judging.
right? So rather than say, I should be okay with this, you say, okay, I'm not okay with this. What's the threat? You're trying to convince yourself he's okay. No, he's not. Okay, and like little baby girl who's trying to emotionally blackmail everybody in the class, same thing, active threat. Active threat. Okay. Interesting. So you're used to emotional blackmail. You avoid or pretend it doesn't exist when someone actively attacks you. So you remember you were having, yeah. And if you don't tell the truth and choose how to interact with it, you're forced into victim.
And is there a difference between the male and female energy?
I think it's the male part too.
Absolutely, this is an element. Like, you are actively afraid of him. You think he can hurt you. And you think he will hurt you because he already has. Okay, so, yes. The thing is, if the one who's doing the baby act was a boy, you'd have a similar reaction in that you'd say, okay, they're trying to emotionally blackmail me. So the fact that that one was male wouldn't bother you. If this was, I don't know, Helga, the bodybuilder, you would still be afraid of her, even though it's not a male. It's the method of attack that you're denying, right? Right. So.
But then the interesting thing is until one comes to grips with the truth out, the chances of your teacher pairing you up are very high until you can shift that.
Mm-hmm.
And then you probably don't have to worry about it. Once you've shifted it, it'll probably sort itself out.
Is it okay for you to say, I don't want to work with that person? Well, you better find out. And if it's not okay, then I would fight that. Like, there's no way in hell you should be obliged to have someone put their hands on you that you're not comfortable with. I don't care if it's figure it out. Don't pair me with this person. Yeah. I wouldn't put yourself in that position. Right? See? So you might not need to. The thing is, well, one way to do that is to say, I'm not going to put myself in this position. Right? So, pay attention to your breath. Check in on what you're really, because this is all part of releasing stuff. Is there a choice? Tell the truth about what you're seeing. Being capable of being in choice and strategy, right? Being capable of imposing your effect. All of it is interrelated, of course.
And being okay with being good and saying no.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. And I think that, this conditioning we have, which is to make good peasants, which is therefore to make good victims, is you're supposed to smile and be nice. You're supposed to, not say no to people. So what is the truth that you want to bring into your own heart? Are you willing to know? Are you willing to see the truth? Are you willing to choose? Are you willing to be capable of choosing? And all of that means, are you willing to love? Are you willing to love? That's it. Now what you can do if you choose is you can bring this light into your heart to bring it back with you, or you can release it as you kind of step out. Bring yourself back up into the bowl. Excuse me. And just float in the bowl. Kind of feel all of that stuff because you integrated a lot. And we are good. We do the good stuff. This is tough stuff that we tackle. And just give yourself a pat on the back for being brave and for going there, for looking at this stuff. And then when you feel ready, come back to the room. And, wiggle your toes and stuff. Make sure you're actually present, especially the people who have to drive, right? It was a good night, ladies. And we have another one in a couple of weeks. 2 in 1 month is a lot, hey? I don't know if we'll do that next year. We'll have to think. We'll talk about it, October, November, because it's intense. We do such intense work, and you're processing so much. Yes. Yeah. It charges you up. Yep.
Is there some warning or anything around Easter, around all the stuff the calming used to do?
So you always, especially April and November, you want to do calming. You want to do calming always, because there's always turmoil in the world. But standard, absolutely.
Didn't you just put a Facebook post?
I certainly did. I said, it's spring, remember to column, and there's more than one article about columning on my website, and the Facebook one has a link to it. Right? Right? It's too peoply. That's cute. And you'll adjust. I mean, this is it because you've just stirred up a bunch of stuff. Now you kind of have to figure out who you are again, in case you were bored.